You are being recorded.
Excellent. Good evening. I'd like to call to order this special meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission Subcommittee on subdivision regulations. It is Monday, August 16th, 2021 at 7 p.m. We are meeting via Zoom. We will begin with a roll call of those members present. Mr. Poplawski.
Dave Poplawski present.
And Joseph Purdy Brown are present. And we will move to our next item on the agenda, review and discussion of subdivision regulations.
All right, let me pull that up. You guys got that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
There we go. I want this closed, this window. Oh. Never been a big fan of laptops. There we go. Just gonna scroll. Actually, gonna scroll back up, and I believe the hyperlinks do work.
They worked for me.
They don't want to work for me though. Oh, here comes Lenky. All right, so while he's coming in, I'll see if I can do it from the sidebar. So otherwise I'm going to be annoyed.
Good evening, Mr. Lanky.
Oh, now we know John's there. He's got his music on in the background. Okay. My suggestion for this is that we just go over where the comments are. Let me see, show comments. Show comments. And we'll just bar over. It's so much more annoying with a laptop. Let me see if I can minimize this window. There we go. I can't see any of you now, so.
That's okay.
All right, so first sidebar comment here. Based on Janet's recommendations, the stormwater LID regs from the zoning regulations are carried over here as a starting point to be discussed in greater depth today. So my suggestion would be just to find where there are comments. And there aren't that many, unless anybody has anything they want to chime in with. And Janet, that is particularly you as the person who did the most consulting on this.
Well, I guess the only thing that I'd like to say is that this was a complete overwrite for the zoning regulations, and I actually spent many hours on it then and coordinated some items with Marla Butts. So now when it comes to the subdivision regulations, of course, consistency is important. So there wasn't a whole lot to revise other than eliminating language that had to deal with like special permit applications and putting more specifically in language that had to do with subdivision applications, and particularly mentioning, like proposed roads and shared driveways. I know I made more changes. They don't seem to be coming up.
Yeah, I think that might be because I just did overwrites as opposed to dropping them in the comment bar. So I'm going to go back up here and have it show the markup, not just the comments. I think that will possibly solve it, possibly, maybe. And if not, maybe somebody who has the marked up copy could share instead.
Tira, if you try where it says simple markup,
yeah,
to all markup, that might.
Let's see. Oh, there still wasn't much, so I'm trying to scroll to the top of the section.
Yeah, page 35 should have.
And while reviewing this, I did also review the comments that Dave Held had submitted just as another local civil engineer when he reviewed the old language from the subdivision regulations to see if he had any other.
Oops, and now it goes so slow and now it goes fast. Yeah, like I say, I really do not expect we're going to be here all night, guys. I would still love to know what is going on here with this. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so that was it. I just did overwrites and that's why they weren't showing. So we'll just read quickly through those. And then I have sort of an overarching question. But if anybody disagrees with any of these suggestions, let's catch them now. So under letter B1, striking any application for development that requires stormwater management pursuant to these regulations in favor of subdivision applications shall include stormwater management provisions, and then et cetera. That seems eminently sensible.
Mhm.
You're on-
Yes,
You're on section 5, stormwater runoff control.
yes.
just Trying
Should
to
be
catch up
should
here.
be page 34
Five.
or 35.
Okay. All right, sorry, apologize. Keep going.
Yep. No worries, John. Okay, so suggestion to strike letter F, the retention of half the water quality volume for the site as delineated in the, I can't even read it, that says CSQM for redevelopment of sites that are currently developed with a directly connected impervious area of 40% or more. So that is what is, that was previously or is included in the zoning regulations under provisions for stormwater management to be included. And we're replacing it with these two beneath, is that, or no, we're just
No, the two-
renumbering, relettering.
Correct, because it would be, I can hardly even think of a circumstance in Thompson that subdivisions would really be taking place in highly developed lands, but in zoning regulations for site development, there's a lot of commercial properties that get redone. There's a lot of paved properties that get redone, multifamily housing that gets redone. But so this mostly has to do with developed sites. That's
Okay.
what I thought.
All right.
Didn't
So-
make that much sense in subdivision.
All right, fair enough. Anybody else have any questions on that suggested deletion? Moving on. Under C, stormwater system design and calculations general. Geez. My contacts are also driving me crazy, guys. So if I sound like I'm drunk, I actually promise it's just because I can't read right now. Applications for subdivisions with 4 or more lots or proposing a shared driveway, and that is suggested as a replacement or instead of projects requiring site plan review shall submit the LID checklist. Now, and I have to highlight this because Appendix B might not be what it is. Except I can't seem to highlight this thing. Oh, well, all right, I know to go back to it. Any comments there?
So this could just, this is subdivisions with 4 or more lots or proposing, like the 2 ors, like I understand, but are kind of throwing me a little bit. Like for me, it might be a little clearer to say subdivisions with 4 or more lots or subdivisions proposing a shared driveway.
Yeah, I think linguistically you are correct.
Yes, I think that sounds better as well. if you want to know what the thought process behind that was, the subdivisions of 4 or more are the ones that require an open space and are generally your, your larger subdivisions that might have a public hearing. If somebody just came in for a 2 or 3 lot subdivision, it would probably have very little stormwater incorporated. So for them to have to fill out the LID checklist, it's your call, but I just.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, thanks for saying that, Janet, because it just reminded me to ask the question. How does that align with in other parts of these regulations where we've delineated, I don't know if it was 6 or fewer or 6, you know what I mean?
well, I think that might be one of the things that we have to go back and look at side by sides after we have this sort of cleaner draft complete.
But this is definitely the one that triggers the open space. I'm not 100% sure about the public hearing.
Yeah, and at this point, I would say neither are we. Because there's even been some discussion, although I don't think it went conclusively one way or another, about what even the value of the public hearing is in some of these cases at all. If they set up incorrect expectations from the public, or the division of the definition of what is a subdivision, how many plots, that was in that statutory definition that Dennis sent me, and I do think it is 3 or more, whereas we had waffled back and forth on that. I guess I put the question back to you, Janet, which is, does that seem like the proper threshold for applications, for subdivisions with 4 or more lots? I mean, I'm guessing because that's what you suggested, that's where you think things start to really require that kind of scrutiny.
Well, and I did know that it did trigger the open space. So it just that, historically has been something in the town that, signified a little bit of a larger subdivision. I do think the shared driveway thing is very important, because if those become more popular, they are like miniature roads. And so they're actually more likely to require drainage considerations than if it's just an existing town road and somebody puts 2 or 3 lots off it, that everything is just more dispersed. So, if you only had 2 lots, but they were going to share a 1,000-foot driveway, you would want some good
We
drainage.
do have a few of those.
For sidewalks, it was 6 or more lots where private roads are proposed.
You're looking at that now, Joe?
Yeah.
I mean, that wouldn't be unreasonable either.
I agree with Janet on the shared driveways, though. You could have, even 2 or 3 driveways with excess water coming down that shared driveway, entering a road.
Yeah, I think we probably all agree on the plans proposing shared drives. It's the trigger for how many lots otherwise, right? Is that the question I'm understanding you to have asked, Joe?
Yeah, I was just wondering if it's something that that should be consistent throughout. Do we want to have a common threshold where, or rather, I guess my question is if it makes sense to think about those as a common threshold. If we did it for
Well,
sidewalks, for
If
street
that were the
trees,
case,
for lighting.
yeah. I mean, if that were the case, I would say use your lowest possible threshold then, which would be the 4 lots, because then you're just saying up front that, development requires this kind of conscientiousness. Now, I don't know. I don't know if the rest of the commission would agree with that or not. But if the goal is to have it be, one consistent threshold, but maybe it doesn't really need to be. And again, this would be a question I would direct more to Janet from an engineering standpoint. What's sensible versus what's onerous.
Mhm.
I mean, I think it's sensible to not have too high of a number because the LID checklist is not really onerous. It's not something that's going to take another, 20 hours, it might take another 4 hours or something, which is, not having the property owners be unduly burdened by excessive engineering.
And I think it protects, it protects the integrity of the town roads and gives us a view into what's going on. It's not, 4 hours is 4 hours. I don't see that to be painstaking.
Mhm.
The reason I made my other statement here was, and maybe this is for Janet, for the shared driveways, do we consider delineating that number, or maybe two homes on a shared drive, or four, or I just think it looks better if we define the subdivision and define the shared drives.
That's coming up. We got a gentleman that wants to do a shared driveway with 5 houses on it, right here in, you came to one of the meetings about 3-4 months ago.
You're talking about Napic
I believe so.
off
And-
Thompson Hill Road, maybe, or Thompson
No,
Road?
is there one right here off of where I live here, off of Ravenel Road?
That I do not know. I don't remember one being off there, but that doesn't mean there wasn't one.
'Cause he did come to one of our meetings and he was explaining it. I have to find
Oh,
the
that was-
paperwork.
That was Thompson Hill. That was
But Thompson Hill?
$1 million house up there that's for sale.
Oh,
No,
I know why
the-
you think that, John, because I think he also owns some property up near you, but he wasn't talking about that one. I think that's what that was.
Well, the guy that just came, the gentleman that came, right there with Marianapolis, he's got the house that he wants to put there right off of,
Yeah, that was one house. He just wanted to move out of the.
right.
Yeah,
But there was another gentleman, because I can't think of his name now, but I can see him.
yeah, he's a
He lives
builder.
Lives in Florida or someplace like
Yeah, he was
Texas.
one of the Kabasa kids.
Excuse me?
He was one of the Kabasa kids. That was their business name.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Oh, out of
So when you-
Fabian.
You know where the, that's John, but you know when you come down the hill where they want to put the new preschool that I think we approved that, as you're coming down towards Anya,
Yeah.
the long
193.
driveway on the right that goes before you go over 395, that long driveway, he wanted to put 4 or 5 shared drives, a shared drive with 4 or 5 lots up there.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
we're all,
all right,
we're all
I had-
talking about the same thing. It's just that the guy
Okay.
owns more than one parcel, John.
Yeah.
He was talking about the one Dave's referring to.
That's the one I was saying, because that he really I guess he's really gonna be trying to put it through. So that's something this is where we gotta, not just 2 houses, we have to think about if somebody wants to do a 5 shared driveway, or 5 house shared. Will that be a special permit or special, meeting, whatever, Janet, what's your thought on
I've used shared driveways as being like miniature roads, so I think previously in these regulations, when there were some things about submission requirements and stuff, and the shared driveway section from Killingly, I think that they require a higher level of engineering. So I believe that if there's even one shared driveway, they should submit the LID checklist, because it's not, really onerous, and it causes people to think and say, let me just adjust my grading so that I can have more sheet flow instead of sending it onto the road. Because once they start doing that checklist, they have to start checking, yes, I considered this. Yes, I did this.
I was going with 2, but I like the 1. If you get, you get a 1,000-foot or a 2,000-foot, couple 2,000-foot driveways off a shared drive, and you get that water spill off coming down that shared drive, you could have large volume of runoff.
And
So
they're
are you,
wider.
so are you suggesting here, Dave, and I just want to be clear, that we're just amending this slightly to read 1 or more shared drives?
Janet.
That's my feeling. And I don't know how the other members, if, you know, John or Joe like that, but I think it should.
Yeah,
Well,
I think so.
That's a good point, Dave, and everything, but also, like you said, 1,000 foot. And with, you know, with the runoff coming off of that, there's gonna have to be somewhere down the line, in my opinion, that they're gonna have to share. And Janet, this is where you come in, but it has been done where they had to share what they call detention pond, wherever they ran into that, so they didn't create the overflow going down into the town road. I'm just
Yes.
throwing that in there, but is it necessary or not? You know what I mean?
Yes, because there's going to be maintenance agreements for these shared driveways, right? So people share the costs of resurfacing it, snow plowing it, and they also have to share the costs of handling their stormwater, keeping their basins clean, unclogging their culverts. So it's part of the infrastructure of the driveway. There might be utilities, so yeah, that it would be part of their maintenance agreement.
Something that has to be thrown into it then, more or less.
Yeah.
So I
Okay,
like the one or more, Tara. I think it's,
you got it.
I'll go along with Dave on that. And
I
thank you,
love
Mr.
it.
Mackey.
I love how well we get along. All right, and I
You can
do
relate
think it
that.
was a while till we had another comment, because this is all copied and pasted directly out of the zoning regulations.
Page 39, Tira, is I think where the next ones are.
Thank you. I'm going slowly with it because I don't have a mouse on this laptop. I'm just tippity tappity tapping to move it, and sometimes it goes wicked fast, so.
would you say page 39, Joseph?
Yeah,
Okay, so, and we're here, so here we're in low impact development, letter I, intent. It looks like these are just language tweaks to align them with subdivisions. So the suggestion under letter lowercase c, these regulations are intended to identify LID practices for proposed subdivisions within the town and to articulate a strong preference for utilizing LID design strategies. That's fairly straightforward. Similarly, we have an edit under lowercase letter d, striking except for zoning permit applications, which are not relevant to the subdivision regulations, simply stating LID shall be incorporated to the extent practicable in all subdivisions, therefore
Wait, should that
striking.
say, should you add shared drives too to that? Or is this?
Yeah, I know why. Yes, I know what you're asking. But these are the subdivision regulations, so you would only be consulting them if you were proposing a subdivision.
But you're in low impact development, right? What's,
Right, so the question that you're actually asking, I think, is actually a question for, do we need to add that in the zoning regulations? In our next round of edits, which is gonna actually be next year. I mean, a shared drive really is only proposed in subdivision, right? Because you're talking about more than one lot or more than one home.
Well,
Doesn't mean
I'm
it
just-
doesn't mean it shouldn't be in the zoning regulations. It's
well, you can have shared driveways in commercial site development plans, but then they would already be covered because you'd need a site plan approval, and those all require the LID checklist and LID. So if it was a shared driveway in a, like I said, the commercial setting without a subdivision, I think the zoning regulations do cover that already.
okay,
doesn't mean that we can't further refine that in the next
Right.
iteration of changes.
Yep.
But it is my feeling that it is not sufficiently urgent to the ones that we're about to, undergo anyway. And then in terms of this being the book of regulations for subdivisions, you're only in here if it's a subdivision, whether it's got shared drives or not.
Okay.
All right, and then recommended LID practices. Again, we have a language edit here under lowercase letter a, instead of parking runoff, street and driveway runoff. That's the only difference, is the change in the title. No, I'm sorry, it's not the only change. But the language is made consistent. So developers are encouraged to use best management practices, BMPs, to minimize, treat, prevent, and or reduce degradation of water quality and flooding potential due to stormwater runoff from streets and driveways, that is, instead of parking. Next edit, under Roman numeral 3, stormwater management systems, striking in parking lots. So it just says stormwater management systems shall be designed in accordance with BMPs as described in the most recent version of the Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual of CTDEEP. Next suggested change is in Roman numeral 4. Infiltration of stormwater shall be accommodated to the extent possible through limitation of land disturbance and grade changes, use of shared driveways, reducing street length, retention of existing natural drainage areas and wetlands, and use or creation of vegetated islands, vegetated medians, and vegetated perimeter buffer strips. So what's significant here is the addition of the reference to shared driveways and reduction of street length as specifically being desirable. If anybody has anything they want to comment on further, pipe up. Slight edit here under Roman numeral 5. Wherever possible, drainage shall be designed such that all surface runoff, both piped and overland flow, is conveyed through vegetated swales, vegetated filter strips, created wetlands, rain gardens, or detention basins with biofiltration prior to discharge into existing wetlands, streams, ponds, or other water bodies. The only difference, striking the term parking lot. Under lowercase letter b, under LID, roof runoff, where practical and feasible, drainage of rooftop runoff shall be directed into rain gardens or a suitable designed and landscaped area on the property, or directed to underground infiltration chambers. I don't even understand what that edit was, but whatever it is, it looks like it was wacky. Infiltration? There's probably a typo in the prior draft.
Well, I think it just said infiltrated.
Okay.
So this is just a little more specific. This could be language that could carry over into the next
Yep.
rewrite of the zoning regulations, but it's just slightly more specific.
Right. And then let's see, under lowercase letter c, clearing and grading, Roman numeral 2, clearing, grading, and tree preservation areas shall be delineated. Oh, we need to strike
I guess
both
both, yeah.
on project plans. As opposed to both on project plans and in the field. Okay. And number 3, LID checklist, swapping out subdivisions of 4 or more lots for projects requiring a site plan review. But does that mean we also have to add shared drives here, or is that implied in
Yeah.
the rest?
Yeah, probably to be consistent. I should have put that in there, the same language. That would be.
Applicants for subdivisions of 4 or more lots or 1 or more shared driveways shall submit the LID checklist found in, and we know this needs to be. Okay. Anybody have any comments on stormwater?
Sorry, Terry, can I be like super pain? Can we just go back up to where that language was before and make sure it's exactly the same?
It probably isn't.
I think it had Joe's comments with subdivisions.
I thought we were working in a Google Doc and I scrolled back up to see the change. And of course it hadn't changed because we're in a Word doc.
Yeah,
I was like, why didn't
I actually hate Google Docs.
I do too, actually.
It's such an unfriendly way that it's presented. I mean, that it tracks the changes in real time is great and all, but. All right, so what does this say? Subdivisions with 4 or more lots or subdivisions proposing 1 or more shared driveways. Okay, hold that in your brains.
Got it. Subdivisions proposing.
Yeah. Okay. I type so slowly on a laptop. All right, anybody have any further comments on stormwater management design, LID, any of that? I think there was even less commentary on the erosion and sediment control section. All right, so under letter B, erosion and sediment control plan requirements, applicant shall provide, yada, yada. Number 3, a map at the same scale as the site development plan that shows. And it's suggested that we strike the location of the proposed project and adjacent properties.
The features that I striked here are required for subdivision applications. So this deletion is just so that they don't have to be on the erosion and sediment control plan, which could make it.
So it's just
too
eliminating a
crowded.
redundancy.
Right, you'll be getting that information on either the cover sheet or on a location map. So it's just like kind of not crowding up the site plan.
Thank you, Janet. That was going to be my exact question.
All right, the existing and proposed topography.
Those just here need to be relettered ABC.
Okay, that will, yes. The existing and proposed topography, including soil types, wetlands, water courses, and water bodies. And Janet, you're suggesting not soil types? Is that, again, a case of redundancy, or it's just not?
Yes, you're required, like on your location maps and cover sheets to show, the property and other properties within like 200 feet. You're proposed to show soil types. So this is literally just on the erosion and sediment control plan, what would typically be shown so that the contractor would adequately handle erosion and sediment control, and you don't need those other features here on this sheet.
Okay, and then under lowercase letter D, striking the proposed land alterations in favor of the limits of disturbance.
Yeah, Marla has been kind of liking that language on plans that come through the Wetlands Commission to show like a really defined limit of disturbance.
Okay, so that is also Marla's preferred language. Okay, I should note that here.
I mean, I didn't check it with the right this now, but I'm just giving my experience recently on applications.
All right, and then see what else we got here. What is this even under? The ENS plan shall comply with the following criteria. Okay. So under lowercase letter e, provision shall be made to effectively accommodate any increased runoff caused by changed soil and surface conditions during and after development. And then we're striking this second sentence. Computations for runoff shall be in accordance with technical release number 55, Urban Hydrology Engineering Division Soil Conservation Service, USDA, as amended. Just unnecessary? Is there an actual?
Yes, because the drainage design is supposed to be in accordance with accepted engineering practices and the Condot drainage manual. So there's, there's different, this is kind of like too specific and not necessarily correct in all circumstances. You might want to use another methodology that would be perfectly acceptable to Condot.
Okay. All right, and then under lowercase letter f, the permanent final vegetation and structures shall be installed as soon as is practical. And then we have a strike with multiple question marks, as determined by the ZEO and or the Thompson Wetlands agent as applicable. Feelings there?
Well, the permanent final vegetation and structures would have been approved along with the application, right? So wouldn't we want Cindy or Inland's Wetlands signing off on it?
Well, I guess I have a different question, which is, what does this actually refer to? These are erosion and sediment plan shall comply with the following criteria. Does letter F actually refer to the plan, or are we just repeating something we want them to do as a part of their process? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I think we all agree that the permanent vinyl vegetation and structure shall be installed as soon as is practical. But that's an action, not an item on a plan.
Yeah.
But is there some other, and this is a question for you, Janet, is there some other reference to final vegetation and structures within the erosion and sediment plan that should be referenced here?
Well, there is like seeding dates, there's only certain times that you can establish seed, obviously. But I guess the thing is, as soon as practical, as determined by the ZEO, like I don't think Cindy would typically go to a site and tell a contractor, what date or how they have to manage their operations, because she doesn't know the whole process. Maybe they're not seeding because they have somebody coming in next week to dig a utility trench or put in the well, and the well truck's going to drive all over the lawn. So I would say in practice, I don't think that usually happens, that the ZEO comes and tells somebody.
So
I don't know.
So just trying to wrap my head around how it would be appropriate to include this in requirements of the plan. Would it be a proposed timetable for the installation of final vegetation and structures?
That usually is part of the narrative, and that's in conformance with the 2002
So that
Soil
would be
Erosion and Sediment Guide from the state of Connecticut. So
that would be redundant again.
Me, yeah, you might not even need F at all, but
Joe, Dave, what do you guys think?
Well, yeah, I'm sort of thrown by this as soon as is practical. Like, it's not very precise language,
Well, that was a thought I had as well.
and I understand why it's not precise, but I also, then how enforceable is it?
So, I mean, I'm just getting confused by it. So is it noted on it's noted on the plans where it's going to be, the permanent final vegetation and structures are noted. So if it's it's twofold. If it's a shared drive, someone has to look at it, right, to see that it was done off the checklist. And if it's a new street, it would be the DPW, I'm assuming. That I'm just struggling with the
The ENS plan shall comply with the following criteria. The permanent final vegetation and structures shall be installed as soon as practical. I mean, if you just read it as one sentence, it's not a sentence that has meaning.
Yeah.
So the question is, do we strike it or do we amend it to include something along the lines of including a proposed timeline as a part of the ENS plan, which is the only thing, if we want to keep some reference to it, that makes any sense to me.
I'm sorry, say that again, Tara.
So if you read number 4, just as if it was one sentence as opposed to a bunch of semicolon points with lowercase letter f. The ENS plan shall comply with the following criteria. The permanent final vegetation and structures shall be installed as soon as is practical. That action does not really refer to something that is
Right.
included on the plan.
Mm-hmm.
But you may want to reference the fact, something that indicates that there is a finite period of time in which final vegetation and structures shall be installed. So you can't be too precise, as we've established, because you could propose that it would be done by July 2021 and it would be a total washout in July 2021, and then you're out of compliance. So a time frame, a general time frame, if you want to keep some reference, to me is the only thing that makes any sense. But maybe you guys see something else. That's why I'm tossing it out there.
So we'll be reviewing the ENS plan, right? It says like B, for an example, to the greatest extent possible, existing vegetation should be retained and protected, right? So that's gonna be part of the ENS plan. So with that in mind, I mean, these are all references as to they have to comply. So I think rewording it, I think permanent final vegetation and structures shall be installed as soon as is practical with joint coordination. I don't even know. It's a tough one.
you could say something as soon as is practical and in accordance with the construction schedule incorporated in the, ENS plan. I mean, that's, every ENS plan does have a schedule. It's often flexible because of a lot of things are determined by the time of the year for actual vegetation. Or you can't pour your foundation in January and February. There's a lot of seasonality. So it's always going to be flexible, but are supposed to.
Yeah.
All right, so let's read that. The permanent final vegetation and structures shall be installed as soon as is practical in accordance with the schedule proposed in the ENS plan. Is that what we're trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
All right. It only took 5 geniuses. See what else
Oh,
there is.
I hope you didn't include me in that.
I absolutely did include you, John Lenke.
No.
I would never leave you out, but that's it,
Oh, I
guys.
wish-
That's
That's it.
that was everything that we had. So now I'm going to throw one more question out here, which is this. We have in other discussions of these documents tried to stay away from repeating verbatim things in other documents, in that once you change one, that you then have to go change the other. So the real question is, do we include this, or do we refer subdivision applicants back to the zoning regulations and the related sections? And we've made some alterations here. And I will not say that I have strong opinions in either direction, but just the pattern that we have followed thus far has been not to be redundant with other publications, although we've made some exceptions.
Yeah, this feels different to me. This feels like something we would want to keep in the subdivision regulations and the here, even though they already exist in the zoning regulations.
Well, Janet, as a user, how do you feel about that?
You know, I thought exactly about that point, Tira, but then you would almost have to revise the ones in the zoning regulations to make them more all encompassing, instead of only referring to certain things are for site plan approvals and certain things are for special permits. So you would still have to take some action. And
Mhm.
I find that answer satisfactory. What about you, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Dave, John, how are you feeling?
I agree.
2 shots of tequila would help.
Is that just
No,
your
I'm,
answer?
of
That's your answer for everything, John.
course. No, I think it's a good, I think what Janet put across, and yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah, we have already done all this work and reviewed it multiple times. So
Yeah, I mean-
I'm cozy with that.
Why should we keep repeating ourselves?
I'm going to try to save and send this back to myself. Can do that here. I don't have, I haven't yet figured out how to access my shared files here. Hmm. Well, I'm saving it anyway. Spec document, manage document. Export. I feel like I should be able to save and send this from here, but maybe I can only do that in Outlook.
Mm.
Are you
Well,
on VPN?
huh?
Are you on VPN?
Yes, but for some reason I can't access the my shared network file. I have yet to be able to open it.
Oh,
So, you know, it's a little squirrely, but that's okay. I'll just save it to the desktop and email it to myself here, and then that'll solve that. Okay, okay. Better still be here when I'm done. Okay, stop share. I told you this one would be a quickie, guys. This is not going to be the case next Tuesday when we do conservation subdivisions and open space subdivisions, or open space requirements and conservation subdivisions. But that
Great,
one will
because
be
Monday's not going to be a short meeting either. So
awesome. So get yourself an extra large bottle of tequila, John.
With the worm, because it takes a while to get down to the bottom. That's your best friend, is the worm at the bottom. Kenny Chesnick.
So you say. Okay, so we can call this a wrap. I would just
Wonderful.
remind you all that we have an active crowd fund out there waiting for your donations.
Thank you, Madam.
Would you like me to pop that link right in here?
Please do.
Let me see if I can find it.
And while she's doing that, I will move on to agenda item number 3, and will accept a motion.
You got it.
And I
Mr.
make
Lanky-
that motion.
Yeah,
Mr.
don't go,
Lanky moves to adjourn and Mr. Poplawski seconds. This meeting is adjourned at 7:51 PM.
yeah, don't go anywhere though, guys, because I'm dropping you in this link. Let me stop the recording though. Let's see, recording is stopped. Stop cloud recording.